On the surface, wrestling is simple. It's a choreographed stunt show where the winners already know they're winning and the losers pretend to be shocked about it. You've got your heroes, your villains, your story arcs, and all this ties together to keep you tuned in every week. But the real entertainment, sometimes it doesn't happen in the ring, it happens backstage, where egos clash, tempers boil, and reality often makes the scripted stuff look tame in comparison. Walkouts, lawsuits, brawls, and catering. That WWE Unreal show on Netflix, yeah, they should have shown that kind of stuff instead of boardroom meetings. The reason a lot of fans are obsessed with this kind of chaos is probably because it's authentic. The matches may be scripted, but the backstage grudges are very, very real. When a wrestler storms out mid-angle or punches someone's lights out backstage, it cuts deeper than any worked promo. So, from betrayals that reshaped entire eras to fistfights that nearly tanked entire promotions, these exits are more than juicy gossip. They're proof that wrestling's greatest storylines sometimes happen when the cameras aren't rolling. I know, but in a video like this, it needs to be brought up, and that's why I'm getting it out of the way first. November 9th, 1997, Survivor Series. The night Bret Hart got mugged in front of 20,000 Canadians and millions watching at home. It's the Rosetta Stone of pro wrestling drama. Every shocking betrayal you've seen since, it simply doesn't compare. Bret the Hitman Hart, company man for 14 years, WWF champion, hero to small children and anyone who enjoys pink and black clothing. He's on his way out the door to WCW. The problem? He's still holding the WWF belt. Normally, you drop the title on your way out, but Bret had one condition. He wasn't going to lose it in Canada, and certainly not to Shawn Michaels. Not to his smarmy, gossiping, I lost my smile degenerate rival, who he hated with the kind of real-life venom usually reserved for divorces. The plan was simple. The Survivor Series main event was supposed to end in disqualification. Bret keeps the title for one more night, he walks out with dignity, everyone goes home happy. Except, Vince McMahon had other plans and he couldn't resist being a real sneaky bastard. Vince, Shawn, and a couple of insiders cooked up their own little plan. Halfway through the match, Shawn slaps on Bret's own sharpshooter. Bret never tapped, never said I quit, nothing. But McMahon stormed to the ring announcer, he barked, ring the damn bell, and just like that, Shawn Michaels was the new WWF champion. The betrayal was instant. Bret looked around and he looked very confused and very hurt. The crowd sat in confusion. Earl Hebner ran out of the arena faster than anyone has ever seen him move, and we got the most infamous screwjob in wrestling history. Backstage, Bret punched Vince so hard in the face that apparently McMahon got lifted off his feet before he hit the deck. Vince later claimed he told the boys he wouldn't screw Bret out of any money that he was owed, which is a very Vince McMahon thing to do after already screwing someone. The public, however, were treated to Vince going on TV to announce that Bret screwed Bret, and this really didn't do McMahon any favours. But the long-term effects actually benefited the company. The screwjob blurred the line between scripted and real so effectively that pro wrestling itself never went back. Vince McMahon, the cartoon announcer in a blazer, became Mr. McMahon, the evil boss who everyone wanted to see get humiliated. Stone Cold Steve Austin was more than happy to dish out that humiliation, and this did great numbers for the WWF. Montreal also made something very clear. The real stuff, the unscripted betrayals, was way more compelling than anything on the booking sheet, especially during this era. That's why people still argue about it decades later. Was it a work? Was Shawn in on every detail? Did Vince just outplay everyone? Whatever side you're on, the fact we're still talking about it tells you everything you need to know. Montreal just wasn't a screwjob, it was the screwjob. The night reality became the best angle the WWF ever booked. If the Montreal Screwjob was wrestling's great Shakespearean betrayal, Stone Cold Steve Austin's 2002 walkout was more like your drunk uncle storming out of the family barbecue because someone didn't put on his favourite music. By 2002, Austin was the biggest star the business had ever produced. He carried the company through the Attitude Era on a busted neck and on an endless supply of beer. But the relationship between Austin and WWE management was, well, unique. Unique in the fact that Austin had, or maybe thought he had, some degree of creative control over who he wrestles, who he beats, and who beats him. This goes back to even before 2002 with stories of Austin refusing to work with certain people, such as Mark Merrow. The straw that broke the rattlesnake's back though was Vince McMahon wanting Stone Cold to do a job to Brock Lesnar on free TV in a King of the Ring qualifier. On Raw, with no build-up, no pay-per-view payday, just go out there and make this kid look good. Austin said he wasn't doing it. He saw it as disrespectful, a wasted money match that could have headlined a summer pay-per-view. So instead of doing the job, Austin went home. He literally walked out of the company and he left the WWE scrambling to explain why their top star had simply just vanished. Now, it wasn't just about Brock. Austin was falling apart physically, his neck was toast, his knees were shot, and he had been going hard on the old Steve Weisers, apparently. Creatively, he felt directionless. He had already turned down a WrestleMania 18 match with Hulk Hogan. Yeah, that match. And by 2002, it sounds like he was maybe being a little difficult to please backstage. From Vince's side, they had just crushed WCW. The Rock had proven he was ready to carry the load. And suddenly, Austin wasn't the be-all end-all anymore. Vince was effectively future-proofing with Brock, and Austin maybe didn't like being treated as yesterday's news. The fallout was pretty ugly. Fans were pissed. Vince buried him on live TV, as did The Rock with his famous "Austin took his ball and went home" line. And Austin later admitted that walking out was the biggest regret of his career. That being said, you do kinda respect someone for standing their ground too. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't graceful, but it was Stone Cold through and through. Stubborn, uncompromising, and walking out on his terms. Booker T walking out of the WWE in 2007 wasn't just another wrestler deciding to call it a day. It was a stand, a statement that he wasn't happy with how the company treated him when things got messy. Or at least, that's the picture that Booker painted. His name ended up tied to the signature pharmacy scandal, the big steroid mess that was splashed all over the media at the time. Booker always denied any wrongdoing, but what really stung was that the WWE, in his eyes, didn't do a thing to defend him. No support, no backing, nothing. On top of that, he had been sitting in production meetings 2 months before his departure, getting a look at the nitty-gritty of the WWE's business, and he didn't like what he saw. We don't know exactly what disenchanted Booker so much, but whatever it was, he didn't like it. He admitted that it left him disillusioned. In Booker's words, "I saw a lot of things I wish I hadn't saw." So he didn't want to be part of a system that, from his perspective, was never going to have his back, and this, along with witnessing firsthand how WWE put things together through creative meetings, was enough to make Booker leave and join TNA. It wasn't a loud exit of fireworks and drama, but it was significant. Booker was one of WWE's most decorated stars, and when someone with that kind of profile says, "Nah, I'm done," it does send a message. We didn't know it right away, but this exit was about respect and trust. However, with all that said, we have to remember too, Booker was named in that signature pharmacy mess, so you have to really make your own mind up about Booker's departure. On August 7, 2014, the WWE put out a statement saying Alberto Del Rio had been released for unprofessional conduct and an altercation with an employee. No polite send-off, no "we wish him the best in his future endeavours," just a blunt chop. End of story. So what exactly happened? The details are fuzzy, but multiple reports, from the Wrestling Observer to mainstream outlets like the Washington Post, lined up on the same account. Del Rio was in catering when a member of the WWE web team allegedly made a racist remark, joking that cleaning up was Del Rio's job. Alberto confronted the guy, he wanted an apology, and instead Del Rio got smirked at. So Alberto slapped him hard, and that slap was what got him fired. WWE's official line was unprofessional conduct, which technically isn't wrong, but it completely ignored the context. That being, Del Rio was reacting to racist provocation. To a lot of people, the way the company handled it felt like sweeping the whole situation under the rug. Del Rio himself wasn't exactly quiet about it either, making sure everyone knew why he snapped. And it's one of those exits that shows how fragile things can be in the WWE bubble. One moment you're on TV every week, the next you're out the door because of a single and, in my opinion, justified confrontation. In Del Rio's case, it sparked a wider conversation about how WWE handled racism and accountability, or maybe better, how they didn't handle such topics. With this in mind, as time went on, it was difficult for anyone to really show sympathy towards Del Rio due to his other unrelated antics away from the ring. Some guys leave WWE over money, some leave over politics. Rhino, he left because of a flower pot. WrestleMania 21 weekend 2005, instead of celebrating on the company's biggest stage, Rhino was in a hotel lobby having an argument with his wife. Things escalated, tempers flared, and in a fit of frustration, the man beast did what only the man beast could do. He smashed a giant decorative flower pot into oblivion. Alcohol was involved, it was WrestleMania weekend after all, but Rhino later made it clear that he didn't get violent beyond the unfortunate plant massacre. Still, WWE management wasn't happy with their veteran ECW import smashing up the lobby like he was auditioning for a gardening-themed hardcore match. He was released shortly after, though in the end, it turned into a blessing in disguise. Rhino brushed it off as a learning experience and found himself in TNA soon after, where he even hit the main event scene. So while one flower pot died for Rhino's sins, it did at least fertilize a fresh start for his career. Fast forward to 2022, and one of the WWE's most high-profile exits didn't happen in a hotel lobby. It happened live on Monday night. Sasha Banks and Naomi, the reigning women's tag team champions, were advertised for a six-pack challenge, but instead of walking to the ring, they walked straight out of the company. The reason? Frustration. They felt their booking didn't make sense, and when they voiced their concerns, they were told to just suck it up. Their response was about as direct as it gets. They handed over their tag team belts and they left the building mid-show. Commentary had to scramble to explain their absence, and the whole thing turned into front-page wrestling news. WWE put out a statement framing them as unprofessional, but plenty of fans saw it as a stand against a system that never quite knew what to do with its women's tag team division. I always thought, however, that there was more to this walkout than what we were told, and maybe we'll never get the full story. If the walkout was due to both ladies feeling that their booking was bad, then yeah, fair play. The booking around the women's tag team belts was bad, and so credit for sticking to their guns. But I don't know, man, I just always felt there was more to it. Sasha had issues in the past with WWE, and maybe this was just the final straw. Who knows? CM Punk's 2014 WWE exit wasn't just another story about creative differences, it was a total explosion. An absolute mess of frustration, bad working conditions, allegedly even worse healthcare, and a man who decided he had had enough of being treated bad. Or at least, that's how CM Punk perceived it. The big reveal came when Punk finally opened up on Colt Cabana's podcast, and boy did he ever let loose. According to Punk, the core issue was his health, or rather the company's lack of concern for it. He was battered, miserable, and he felt WWE cared less about wrestlers' well-being and more about keeping the machine running. The headline detail was a staph infection on Punk's back that WWE doctors allegedly misdiagnosed. Their solution wasn't surgery or antibiotics, it was Z-Pack, always Z-Pack. Punk joked he was drowning in the stuff to the point where he wrestled with a life-threatening infection and ended up literally crapping his pants on an episode of SmackDown. Somewhere though, Vince probably thought this was good TV. And then there was the concussion saga. At the 2014 Royal Rumble, Punk took a knock, he knew he was concussed, and he was sent for testing. The test was so laughably bad that he claimed he passed it while texting and listening to music. The follow-up? They told him to go run the ropes, because, nothing says medically cleared like jogging back and forth for a bit. So Punk finally snapped. His walkout wasn't about losing a push or not main event in WrestleMania, it was really about survival. He turned his exit into a full-blown statement, calling out the company's negligence and ripping back the curtain on how wrestlers are treated. It was a guy saying, "You're killing me and I'm not sticking around to help you do it." Of course, WWE didn't take too kindly to the accusations. Their doctor, Chris Amon, filed a defamation lawsuit against Punk and Cabana. The case dragged on, it aired a lot of dirty laundry, and in the end it painted WWE's medical system in an even worse light than before. The fallout was really big. Punk's words sparked real conversations about wrestler safety and how the company handles concussions and injuries. It also cemented Punk as someone who didn't just talk about being the voice of the voiceless, he actually lived it, even if it meant blowing up his career in spectacular fashion. If CM Punk's 2014 walkout was about bad doctors and Z-Packs, his AEW exit was about something a lot more personal: the collision of human egos. All Out 2022 was supposed to be a huge deal for AEW and CM Punk. CM Punk wins the title in Chicago, the company's biggest star stands tall. Instead, the whole thing went up in flames. At the post-show press conference, Punk sat down with a muffin and he decided to nuke the AEW locker room. No script, no filter, just a full-on rant while his boss sat right next to him looking very uncomfortable. Colt Cabana, the Young Bucks, Adam Page, journalists, nobody was safe. He accused AEW's EVPs of being irresponsible, of spreading lies about him, and he delivered the now infamous line, "They couldn't manage a fucking target." It was part press conference, part hostage video, and it was all CM Punk. But the words Punk said were just the opening act. Backstage, things exploded into what fans quickly dubbed Brawl Out. Reports vary, but everyone agrees it got physical. AEW are fond of non-disclosure agreements, so we never got the full story. Some say Punk threw the first punch, others say the Elite barged into his locker room like the Kool-Aid Man. Either way, fists flew, furniture toppled, Ace Steel may or may not have bitten someone, and somehow Kenny Omega ended up trying to save Punk's dog Larry. Yes, in the middle of a supposed corporate crisis, one of AEW's executive vice presidents was worried about the pupper, so fair play Kenny. At least someone was thinking straight. The fallout was ugly. Punk got suspended, the Elite got suspended, the locker room was split down the middle, and suddenly AEW looked less like a polished promotion and more like a really expensive episode of Jerry Springer. To try and contain the chaos, AEW even launched the second show just to keep Punk away from the people he couldn't get along with, which was apparently a fair chunk of the roster. The real nail in the coffin though came in 2023. Jack Perry decided he wanted to use real glass for a TV spot. Punk told him no because, safety. And Mr. Perry didn't take it too well. At All In 2023, Jack actually mocked Punk on camera, bragging that he just used real glass, and Punk confronted him backstage. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. There was a brief scuffle between the two that really just looked like Punk pie-facing the former Jungle Boy, but that was enough for Tony Khan to finally pull the trigger. Punk's contract was terminated, AEW lost its biggest draw, and in a bizarre effort to smear CM Punk's name, Tony Khan decided to air the footage of Punk and Perry's confrontation after Punk rejoined the WWE, a little ploy that ended up backfiring. It all goes back to that all-out press conference though. That was the moment fans realised AEW wasn't the land of harmony and creative freedom it claimed to be. Punk's return to wrestling ended the same way his WWE run did in many ways, but he seems to be much happier being back in WWE under the watchful eye of his old nemesis Triple H. CM Punk's Brawl Out exit grabbed headlines, but it wasn't the only time AEW's happy family image cracked. Jake Hager quietly walked away too, and he didn't mince words on the way out. In a pretty recent interview with Chris Van Vliet after leaving AEW, Hager took the time to give Tony Khan a performance review. He described Khan as a leader who couldn't take criticism, someone who was in over his head, and he said Tony treated his wrestlers like his own little playthings, including guys like Sting. According to Hager, the original roster, the founding talent who helped launch AEW, often found themselves sidelined, watching from the back while Tony ran things exactly how he wanted, no input allowed. In Hager's words, they were just sitting side by side doing nothing, even though they'd built the company from the ground up. And then came the line that stuck. Jake called Tony Khan Dad's little billionaire. It's brutal. The phrase not only summed up what Hager, and according to Jake, plenty of others in the locker room seemed to feel about Khan, but it hits hard because it's the same sort of mocking phrase you hear from the bottom of the barrel wrestling connoisseurs on Twitter. To hear it from someone who worked in the company, that gives AEW detractors all the fuel they need. Jake implied that the boss was out of touch, protected by his fortune, and not equipped to handle the politics of a major wrestling company. Whether right or wrong, and no matter what side of the fence you're on, Hager's comments matter because they echo the core issue behind the Punk Elite meltdown. His critique didn't make headlines the way Punk's tirade did, but it painted the same picture. AEW had built itself on freedom and collaboration, but without someone strong to steer the ship, it was always one bad weekend away from disaster. Before the tragedy that ultimately defined his story, Chris Benoit's exit from WCW was one of the most important walkouts in wrestling history, and unlike a lot of these messy departures, this one was more about principle. The short version, well, WCW promoted Kevin Sullivan to head booker after Vince Russo was sent home for a while. Not a popular move, especially for Benoit. Why, you may ask? Because Sullivan didn't just serve as Benoit's on-screen rival once upon a time, he was also Nancy Sullivan's ex-husband, and Nancy, at that point, was Benoit's real-life partner. Benoit and other mid-carders were also fond of Vince Russo because Russo gave these guys a push on TV, so there's a lot of backstage frustration going on at the time of this departure. Benoit decided enough was enough. He linked up with Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Shane Douglas, Conan and Perry Saturn, and 4 out of these 6 men would end up walking out together. The timing was even juicier. Benoit had literally just won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship at Sold Out 2000. Less than 24 hours later, he gave the belt back like he was returning a video rental while saying, "Yeah, I'm out." Benoit and his friends then headed straight for the greener pastures of Vince McMahon's empire. This wasn't just a talent jump, it was a mutiny. To those mid-card guys who Russo pushed, WCW's decision to promote Sullivan wasn't viewed as a good creative call. It was seen as a big step backwards, and by leaving en masse, the Radicals made a statement. Wrestlers had power when they acted together. For WCW, it was a gut punch. Losing 4 excellent in-ring competitors overnight left the company scrambling, and it sent a clear message to wrestling fans. WCW wasn't just losing ratings, it was losing its people, and in many ways, it was losing its backbone. In hindsight, the Radicals' walkout was one of those moments that highlighted just how chaotic WCW had become. It was about a company so tangled in personal grudges and bad management that its own stars would rather walk away than play along, and that exodus, in its own way, was another crack in the foundation that would eventually bring WCW crashing down. Bill DeMott, Hugh Morris, General Erection, and later the head trainer at WWE's developmental system, the guy in charge of shaping the future of the company, and by shaping, I mean allegedly screaming at, berating, and sometimes downright humiliating young talent until social media finally caught up with them. DeMott was fired in 2015 after a flood of allegations came out from former trainees. The stories painted him less like Mr. Miyagi and more like a drill sergeant who thought he was running Full Metal Jacket with ring ropes. Wrestlers accused him of bullying, verbal abuse, even making racially insensitive jokes. Basically, if there was a wrong way to motivate someone, DeMott was accused of finding it. Now, WWE at first defended him, as did some of his peers, including Chris Jericho, but once enough rookies started talking and the press got wind of it, the company had no choice but to quietly cut ties, or in WWE terms, he resigned, which in wrestling speak means, we'll let you leave with a shred of dignity, but don't slam the door on your way out. The fallout was awkward. Bill denied most of the claims, insisting that he was tough but fair, and he pointed out that plenty of wrestlers had come through his system just fine. However, the sheer volume of complaints told another story. Fans, meanwhile, couldn't help but notice the irony. The guy who once wrestled under the name Hugh Morris had apparently been anything but funny behind the scenes. No laughing matter indeed. In the end, DeMott's firing was one of those rare moments where WWE actually looked like the reasonable party. They cleaned house, they distanced themselves, and the performance program rolled on without him. And while Bill may have thought he was making the next generation stronger, the lesson most people took away was simpler. Don't be an asshole in a business where every single one of your students now has a Twitter account. From flower pots getting smashed to belts getting dumped on desks, the entire locker room's imploding thanks to a guy who just got done eating a delicious muffin. The reality of these exits can be more entertaining and chaotic than anything that happens on our TV screens. Every exit I've looked at had its own flavour. Some were about pride, some about health, some were about respect, and others were just plain ridiculous. All of them were pretty notable though, and as much as it sucks for anyone to lose their job, it's still a pretty interesting topic to dig into. And hey, some folks mentioned here actually fared better after leaving the company they worked for, so it's not all bad. If history has taught us anything, it's that the next big exit, just like the next big debut, is always right around the corner. And while some guys will share their story about why and how they got released, others will keep it quiet so they don't hurt their chances of work elsewhere. You gotta respect their choices either way, but I will admit to always being interested in why certain exits have taken place. Anyway, thank you for watching, folks. I really do appreciate it, and try not to get fired when going back to work tomorrow. Please take care.